I used to think love was like the ocean, vast, deep, and eternal. Now I know it's more like footprints in the sand, destined to be washed away by the tide. But before they disappear, those prints tell stories. And this is mine. They say architects see the world differently. We notice patterns, angles, the way light falls across surfaces. Maybe that's why I noticed the footprints that morning. 2 sets of them, side by side, leading up to our front porch. One I recognized, Lily's delicate steps, the same ones I'd seen countless times during our 15 years together. The other set was larger, unfamiliar, masculine. I should have known something was wrong months ago. The subtle changes in Lily's behavior, the way she guarded her phone, her sudden passion for early morning beach runs. "It's my personal time," she'd say, kissing me goodbye in the dim light of dawn. "The ocean helps clear my mind." I respected that, encouraged it even. What a fool I was. Our friends called us the perfect couple, the architect and the artist, building our life together in our beachfront home. We hosted dinner parties where Lily's paintings adorned the walls, and our guests would marvel at how we complemented each other. "You two are meant to be," they'd say, raising their glasses in toast after toast. Looking back, I see the cracks that were forming, the way her eyes would drift during conversations, how her touches became mechanical, perfunctory. But love is blind, they say. Or maybe I just didn't want to see. That morning, as I stood on our porch studying those footprints, something crystallized in my mind. The precision of the parallel tracks, the way they synchronized. This wasn't a chance encounter. This was a pattern, as clear as any blueprint I'd ever drawn. I didn't confront her then. The architect in me needed more evidence, needed to understand the full scope of what I was seeing. But as I watched her drive away to her yoga class, I felt something shift inside me. The foundation of our marriage, once solid as concrete, now felt as unstable as the sand beneath those telltale footprints. Little did she know her morning ritual had left behind more than just traces in the sand. It had given me the first piece of a puzzle I never wanted to solve, but now couldn't ignore. I went inside and poured myself a cup of coffee, black and bitter, like the thoughts swirling in my mind. From our kitchen window, I could see the ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon. How many mornings had I stood here watching her silhouette grow smaller as she jogged along the shoreline? How many times had I smiled, thinking she was finding herself in those solitary moments? The irony wasn't lost on me. As an architect, I'd spent my career creating spaces for other people's lives, designing every detail to perfection. Yet here I was, watching my own carefully constructed world begin to crumble. The evidence was right there in the sand, as clear as the blueprints I drafted day after day. I took another sip of coffee and made a decision. If Lily was going to turn our life into a game of shadows and secrets, then I would become the most attentive player she'd ever known. Every detail would be observed, every pattern analyzed. The sand may shift with the tides, but I would learn to read its stories before they disappeared. After all, that's what architects do best. We see the invisible lines that connect everything. And I was about to uncover the most important design of my life, even if it meant watching my perfect world collapse in the process. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Lily was already gone, her side of the bed cold and empty. I lay there for a moment, listening to the distant sound of waves before pulling myself up. Today would be different. Today, I would become the observer. I dressed quickly in dark running clothes I never wore because I wasn't a runner. Funny how life forces you to become things you never thought you'd be. The air was crisp as I stepped outside, heavy with salt and secrets. Instead of taking my car, I walked to the beach access point 2 blocks down from ours. If Lily was right about one thing, it was that the beach had a different energy at dawn. The sky was painting itself in watercolors, pink and gold, bleeding into deep blue. Any other day I might have appreciated its beauty. Today I only saw it as illumination for my surveillance. I positioned myself behind a weathered lifeguard station, its wood gray and rough like my thoughts. From here, I had a clear view of our usual stretch of beach, but the station's shadow would keep me hidden. Then I waited. At exactly 6:15 a.m. I saw her. Lily, her blonde hair caught in a high ponytail, wearing the blue running outfit I'd bought her for her birthday. She looked beautiful, just like she always did. But today, she wasn't alone. He emerged from the direction of the public parking lot, tall, tanned, probably in his late 30s, a surfer's build, wearing board shorts and a tight rash guard. They met like they'd done this 100 times before. Maybe they had. I watched them start their run together, their pace perfectly matched, their bodies moving in sync. Occasionally, their hands would brush against each other, too deliberate to be accidental. My fingers dug into the rough wood of the lifeguard station, splinters threatening my palms, but I barely felt it. They ran until they reached a secluded bend in the shoreline, marked by a wooden bench weathered by salt air and time. I'd always wondered why Lily insisted on running this far. Now I knew. The bench offered privacy, partially hidden by sand dunes and seagrass, perfect for secrets. As I watched them sit down together, their shoulders touching, their faces turned toward each other in intimate conversation, I felt something inside me harden. I'd come here looking for proof, but what I'd found was so much worse than footprints in the sand. I'd found intimacy. I stayed in my hiding spot long after they'd left, watching the waves erase their footprints from the sand. If only memory could be washed away so easily. The image of them together kept replaying in my mind like a corrupted file, their synchronized movements, their casual intimacy, the way she smiled at him. That smile used to be mine. When I finally made it back to our house, Lily was already there, fresh from her shower, making breakfast like it was just another morning. The kitchen smelled of coffee and betrayal. "You're up early," she said, sliding a plate of eggs across the counter. "Couldn't sleep?" I looked at her face, this face I'd woken up to for 15 years, searching for signs of guilt, of deception. But all I saw was the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to live two lives. "Just restless," I replied, picking up my fork. "How was your run?" "The usual," she said, turning back to the stove. "The beach was pretty empty today." I watched her back as she moved around the kitchen, noting how easily the lie fell from her lips. How many other lies had I swallowed along with my breakfast over the years? "You know what I love about architecture?" I said, keeping my voice casual. "Everything has to be precise. One wrong measurement, one miscalculation, and the whole structure could collapse." She turned to me, her head tilted slightly. "Is everything okay? You seem different this morning." I forced a smile. Just thinking about a project, the project of uncovering every detail of her deception, of measuring the exact dimensions of her betrayal. After she left for her studio, I sat down at my home office computer. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing, "Graham Harris, surf instructor." 10 minutes later, I had his entire social media presence spread across my screen. There he was, the man from the beach, smiling in photo after photo, many of them taken at local surf competitions. In one picture, dated 3 months ago, I spotted something in the background that made my blood run cold. A familiar figure in a blue running outfit, captured at the edge of the frame. My wife, watching him from the shore. The timestamp showed 6:30 a.m. The architect in me appreciated the irony. I'd finally found the exact moment when the foundation of my marriage began to crack. I spent the next day in my office, canceling meetings and ignoring calls. Instead, I laid out the evidence like blueprints on my desk. Screenshots from Graham's social media, timestamps of Lily's running schedule, photos of their meeting spot, each piece fitting together with terrible precision. The thing about being an architect is that you're trained to see both the big picture and the smallest details. Now, looking at 3 months of their morning meetings, I saw the pattern clearly. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, always at sunrise, always at that same bench. My phone buzzed. Lily, asking about dinner plans with our friends this weekend. I stared at her message, marveling at her composure. Here she was, planning our social life while systematically destroying our marriage. The perfect compartmentalization of a double life. That's when I knew watching wasn't enough anymore. The evidence was there, damning and complete, but simply confronting them felt hollow, inadequate. No, this deserved something more architecturally sound. I opened my laptop and started a new project file. Not house plans this time, but something else. A blueprint for revelation. If Lily and Graham thought they owned those morning hours, they were about to discover how wrong they were. As I worked, a message popped up from our friend Sarah. "Can't wait for Saturday. You and Lily are seriously couple goals." I let out a laugh that sounded strange even to my own ears. If only Sarah knew that her couple goals were built on sand. But she would know soon enough. Everyone would. My phone buzzed again. "Lily, don't forget to pick up wine for Saturday. Love you." I picked up my phone, thumbs hovering over the keyboard. For a moment, I considered typing what I usually would. "Will do. Love you too." Instead, I set the phone down without responding. Let her wonder why her perfectly constructed facade was showing its first crack. On my computer screen, the blueprint for their destruction took shape. It would be elegant, precise, and devastating, just like the buildings I designed. After all, every structure has its breaking point. You just need to know exactly where to apply the pressure. The beach has its own language at dawn. The whisper of waves, the cry of seagulls, and now, the soft crunch of sand under my feet as I walked the path they thought was theirs alone. I'd borrowed a friend's long-range camera, telling him I was photographing shorebirds. In a way, I suppose I was, watching 2 vultures circle what remained of my marriage. From my new hiding spot behind a cluster of sea oats, I documented everything. The way Graham would arrive first, carrying 2 coffee cups from the local beach cafe. How Lily would join him minutes later, their greeting so practiced it seemed choreographed. The careful distance they kept while running, close enough to touch but not so close as to draw attention. The way that distance disappeared when they reached their bench. Frame by frame, I captured their routine. The casual touches, the intimate leans, the moments when they thought they were invisible to the world. The camera's memory card filled with evidence, each image sharper than my own memories of happier times. But it wasn't enough. Anyone can take pictures, gather evidence, expose a lie. I wanted something more profound, something that would make them feel the weight of their deception in their bones. That's when I noticed how the morning light hit the beach glass I'd been absently collecting during my surveillance. The way it caught the sun, fractured it, held it, like secrets trapped in amber. An idea began to form. I drove to the city's glass studio where Lily sometimes taught art classes. The owner recognized me, smiled warmly. "Here to surprise your wife?" "You could say that," I replied, renting time at one of the workstations. For the next 3 hours, I learned how to melt beach glass into shapes, how to trap sand within its layers, how to create something beautiful from broken things. By the end of the day, I had what I needed. A series of small glass spheres, each one containing sand from their meeting spot, each one a perfect paperweight of betrayal. I added one final touch, embedding a USB drive into the base of each sphere, containing selected photos from my morning surveillance. These weren't just evidence anymore. They were art pieces, the kind Lily would appreciate, the kind our friends would admire at dinner parties, passing them around, commenting on their beauty until someone got curious enough to discover their hidden contents. That night, Lily noticed the burns on my hands from the glasswork. "What happened?" she asked, her fingers ghosting over my blisters. "Just trying something new," I said. Sometimes you have to endure a little pain to create something meaningful." She smiled, kissed my cheek, told me she loved that I was exploring my creative side. The intimacy of the moment almost broke me, almost made me want to shatter every glass sphere, delete every photo, pretend I'd never seen those footprints in the sand. But then she checked her phone, and I caught the slight smile that crossed her face as she read a message. A smile that wasn't meant for me. And I remembered why I was doing this, why it had to be perfect, why it had to hurt. I went to my office and opened my project file. The blueprint for their revelation was almost complete. Each glass sphere would find its way to the right person at the right time, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to an inevitable conclusion, or perhaps more appropriately, like footprints in the sand, leading straight to the truth. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, as if nature itself wanted to witness what I had planned. I spent the morning arranging the glass spheres on our dining room table, each one catching the sunlight differently, each one containing its own dark secret. Lily was at her studio, preparing for an upcoming exhibition. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd always been good at putting things on display, except for the truth. Our friends started arriving at 6. Sarah and Mike brought wine. The Hendersons brought dessert. Each couple exclaimed over the glass spheres, picking them up, admiring how the sand seemed suspended inside, frozen in time. "These are gorgeous," Sarah said, holding one up to the light. "Lily, did you make these?" Lily paused in the middle of opening wine. "No, She looked at me, confusion crossing her face. "Did you?" I nodded, taking a slow sip of my drink. "Been learning glasswork. Each one contained sand from our beach. Special memories, you could say." "How romantic," Lisa Henderson sighed. "Mike, why don't you ever do things like this? If they only knew the memories trapped in that glass." The USB drives hidden in their bases were like digital time bombs waiting to detonate. Dinner progressed with the usual rhythm of these gatherings: food, wine, laughter, stories about kids and jobs and vacation plans. I watched Lily play her role perfectly, touching my arm occasionally, laughing at all the right moments. I wondered if Graham knew about these dinners, if he realized he was just the morning shift in her performance. "The spheres really are beautiful," Sarah said again, as we moved to the living room for coffee. "Would you mind if I took one? It would look perfect in my office." "Please," I said, selecting one particular sphere, the one containing photos from the day I'd first spotted her in Graham's social media. "Consider it an early birthday present." Lily shot me a look. We usually discussed gifts together. Another crack in her facade. "Speaking of presents," Mike chimed in, "we should plan something for your anniversary next month. 15 years, right?" "Actually," I said, handing out more spheres to our guests, "I have something special planned already, a retrospective, you might say, of our whole journey together." Lily beamed, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "You haven't mentioned any plans?" I wanted it to be a surprise. I met her gaze steadily. "You like surprises, don't you, honey?" The evening wound down, our friends leaving with their glass treasures in hand. I'd been precise in my distribution, each sphere containing specific moments, specific revelations. Sarah's showed the first discovery. Mike's contained the morning conversations. The Henderson sphere held images of intimate moments on that beach bench. Once we were alone, Lily touched my arm. "That was unexpected, you making art. They're beautiful, but..." "Why didn't you tell me you were working with glass, and why give them away?" I turned to her, studying the face I'd loved for 15 years. "Some things need to be shared, don't you think? Secrets have a way of wanting to be free." She held my gaze for a moment, then looked away. "I'm tired? Coming to bed?" "Soon," I said. "I need to finish some work first." In my office, I opened my laptop. Within hours, our friends would be home, admiring their gifts. Someone would notice the USB port, someone would get curious, and then, like a row of dominoes, everything would begin to fall. The first text came at 11:47 p.m. Sarah, please call me. Now. I watched my phone screen glow in the darkness of my office, imagining her face as she viewed the contents of her glass sphere. By now she'd have seen the first photos, Lily and Graham, their morning meetings, their shared coffees and intimate conversations. More messages followed like aftershocks. Is this some kind of joke? Does Lily know you have these? Oh, God. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. Architects understand the importance of timing, of letting tension build in the right places. Besides, I was busy watching my laptop screen where small dots were turning green one by one, each representing a USB drive being accessed, each sphere revealing its secrets. At midnight, Mike called. Then Lisa Henderson. I let them all go to voicemail, their messages mixing concern with horror, our closest friends discovering that their couple goals were built on lies. Upstairs, I heard Lily's phone start buzzing, a pause, then her footsteps, quick and panicked, crossing to the bathroom. The murmur of her voice, too low to make out the words, but sharp with urgency. Probably calling Graham, warning him that their morning paradise was about to become public knowledge. I opened my project file one last time, reviewing tomorrow's final phase. The glass spheres were just the opening act. The real performance would begin at sunrise, on their precious beach, at their special bench. Everything was ready. The larger glass installation I'd created, the photos I'd carefully sealed inside, the timer set to send select images to our entire social circle at precisely 6:30 a.m. Let them have one last morning together. Let them think they could still contain this, control it, explain it away. By sunrise, their secrets would be as transparent as the glass that held them. Lily's footsteps moved from bathroom to bedroom, then down the stairs. I heard her hesitate outside my office door. She knocked softly. "Ethan, are you awake? Sarah's been trying to reach you. She's saying something about the glass pieces." I swiveled in my chair, facing the door, but not opening it. "Is that right? Maybe you should check yours." "Mine?" "On your nightstand. I left one there earlier, a special piece just for you." Her footsteps retreated quickly, almost running. I pictured her finding the sphere, noticing the USB port, plugging it in with trembling fingers. This one contained everything. The full chronicle of her betrayal, from those first footprints to this morning's coffee meeting. My phone buzzed again. Graham this time, his name appearing on my screen like an accusation. "We need to talk." I typed back my first response of the night. Sunrise, the usual spot. Then I settled back in my chair, listening to the sounds of Lily's world crumbling above me, her muffled sobs, her frantic phone calls, her pacing footsteps. The architect in me appreciated how perfectly it was all coming together, each element failing at precisely the right moment. Tomorrow, as the sun rose over the ocean, everything would end where it began, with footprints in the sand, with secrets revealed in the dawn light, with the final collapse of a structure that had been compromised long ago. I reached for the last glass sphere on my desk, the largest one, the one I'd spent extra time crafting. Inside, suspended in layers of blue glass like insects in amber, were snippets of our life together, wedding photos, anniversary cards, love notes from happier days. All of it surrounded by grains of sand from their morning meetings, the evidence of betrayal literally encompassing our past. This one wasn't for sharing. This one was for breaking. I arrived at the beach an hour before sunrise, setting up my final installation at their bench. The glass structure caught the pre-dawn light, casting fractured shadows across the sand. Inside, their morning meetings played on loop on small screens embedded within the glass, a museum of betrayal waiting for its audience. Graham arrived first, as always. He stopped short when he saw me, his surfboard tucked under his arm like a shield. The architect, he said, trying for casual but missing by miles, finally decided to join the morning crowd? Tell me, I said, remaining seated on their bench, when you were teaching my wife to surf, did you start with the basics, or did you go straight to private lessons in intimacy? He shifted his board, eyes darting toward the parking lot, waiting for Lily, no doubt. Look, man, whatever you think— I don't think, I interrupted. I know. I've been watching your morning meetings for weeks. Quite the routine you two developed. I gestured to the glass installation. Take a closer look. I believe you'll recognize the content. He stepped forward, then froze as he saw himself reflected in the glass. 100 morning meetings playing out in infinite loops, his hand reaching for Lily's, their shared laughs, their stolen kisses. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Not quite the right deity for this situation, I said, checking my watch. Though I suppose betrayal is a rather biblical theme. That's when Lily appeared, wearing her blue running outfit, her steps faltering as she took in the scene. The blood drained from her face as she recognized the images playing within the glass. Ethan, her voice cracked. What have you done? What have I done? I stood slowly. That's an interesting question from someone who's been crafting lies like sandcastles, knowing they'd wash away with each tide. I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. Messages were already pouring in. Our friends, family, colleagues, all receiving their morning revelation right on schedule. The glass spheres were beautiful, weren't they? I asked Lily. Everyone thought so at dinner. They're probably appreciating them even more now, watching your morning performances. You can't— Graham started forward, but I held up my hand. I already have. But please don't let me interrupt your morning routine. Although I glanced at the growing crowd of early beach walkers, phones in hand, whispering and pointing. You might find the audience a bit larger than usual today. Lily stepped between us, tears streaming down her face. We can explain— Explain? I laughed, the sound harsh against the whisper of waves. Like you explained where you were every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning? Like you explained the late-night texts, the hidden meetings? I turned to the glass installation, its screens still cycling through their morning encounters. I thought about shattering this, but I decided it was better to let it stand. Let it catch the light, like your wedding ring used to catch the sun when you'd wave goodbye every morning. The first rays of sunrise hit the glass structure, sending rainbow refractions across the sand, across their faces, across the growing crowd of spectators. In that moment, as their secret life played out in endless loops before an audience they never wanted, I saw the exact second their carefully constructed world collapsed. Graham moved first, grabbing his surfboard. This is insane. I'm out of here. Really? I stepped into his path, running away like waves from the shore. How fitting? The growing crowd had formed a loose circle around us, phones recording every moment. I recognized faces, other surfers, morning joggers, people from our neighborhood. The audience for their unmasking grew with each passing minute. You're making a scene, Lily hissed, her composure cracking. These are our neighbors, our friends. Were our friends, I corrected, before you turned them into unwitting accomplices. Tell me, did you enjoy it? Hosting dinner parties with Sarah and Mike, knowing you'd been with him just hours before? Planning couples' vacations while planning your morning rendezvous? Her phone buzzed continuously, messages, calls, notifications cascading in as the evidence spread through our social circle, each chime like another crack in her perfect facade. It wasn't— She stopped, choking on whatever lie she'd planned to tell. We didn't mean for this to happen. No one ever does, I said, turning to the glass installation. But intent doesn't change the architecture of betrayal. Every secret meeting, every hidden touch, every lie, they're all load-bearing walls now, and they're all coming down. Graham tried again to leave, but the crowd had grown too thick. Someone called out, "Isn't that Lily Matthews, the artist?" Another voice, And her husband, the architect who designed the new community center? Lily stepped toward me, reaching for my arm. I moved back, watching her hand fall through empty air, like trying to catch smoke, trying to grasp something already gone. "We can talk about this privately," she pleaded. "We can fix this." Fix this? I gestured to the screens, to their intimacy playing on endless loop. Like you fixed your morning schedule to accommodate him? Like you fixed your wedding ring to slide off more easily before your runs? The sun climbed higher, catching the glass structure at new angles, throwing their betrayal into sharper relief. Someone in the crowd gasped, probably recognizing themselves in one of the background shots, realizing they'd been an unwitting witness all along. "Those spheres you gave everyone," Lily said, realization dawning. "The ones from dinner? Beautiful, weren't they? Like your lies. Delicate, intricate, ultimately transparent." I checked my phone. The group chat's quite active. Sarah's particularly vocal, though I suppose finding out her best friend has been lying to her face for months would do that. Graham finally found his voice. "You've lost your mind. This is harassment." "No," I said quietly. "This is architecture. Every structure needs a solid foundation. Ours was built on sand, your favorite meeting spot as it happens. Now, everyone can see exactly how it eroded." More phones buzzed, more gasps from the crowd, the evidence spreading like ripples in still water, touching every corner of our social world. "You didn't just betray me," I continued, my voice carrying across the now silent beach. "You betrayed everyone who believed in us, everyone who held us up as their relationship goals, everyone who trusted your perfect little performance." The crowd had grown larger still. I recognized more faces. Parents from the neighborhood, members of Lily's yoga class, clients from my firm, all watching, all recording, all seeing the truth unfold in morning light. "I'm an architect," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I understand structural integrity, and sometimes the only way to deal with a compromised foundation is to expose it, to let everyone see exactly where and how it failed." In the distance, a news van pulled into the parking lot. Someone had tipped them off. The famous local artist and architect, their marriage imploding on a public beach at sunrise. It would make quite a story. Lily saw it too. Her face, already pale, went absolutely white. "What have you done?" I smiled, a gesture as brittle as broken glass. "I learned from the best, honey. I created art from betrayal. Isn't that what you always wanted? For me to understand your artistic vision?" The news van's camera crew was setting up when Sarah arrived, still in her pajamas, clutching the glass sphere I'd given her. Her eyes were red from crying, fixed on Lily with a mixture of hurt and fury. 15 years, Sarah said, her voice carrying across the beach. "I've known you for 15 years. I was your maid of honor." Lily stepped toward her friend. "Sarah, please, don't." Sarah held up the sphere. "All those times you talked about your morning runs, about finding yourself, about marriage being about trust. Were you laughing at us? At how stupid we all were?" Graham tried to slip away in the confusion, but Mike had arrived too, blocking his path. "Going somewhere? Surf instructor?" I watched it all unfold with an architect's appreciation for structural collapse, how each revelation created new pressure points, how each confrontation added weight to an already failing foundation. "You know what the worst part is?" I addressed Lily and Graham, but pitched my voice for our growing audience. "It's not the betrayal, it's the architecture of your lies. How carefully you constructed them, brick by brick, morning by morning. Each secret meeting, another room in your house of deception." The news crew was filming now, their camera drinking in the scene. The glass installation, playing evidence on loop, the growing crowd of friends and neighbors, the betrayed wife still in her running outfit, the lover clutching his surfboard like a shield. "I have a question," I continued, pulling out the final glass sphere, the one filled with our memories. "When did it become easy? The lying, the sneaking, the perfectly timed morning meetings? At what point did betrayal become as natural as breathing? Neither answered. In the silence, waves crashed against the shore, erasing footprints like nature itself was trying to clean away their sins. "Because I've been watching you for weeks now," I said, weighing the sphere in my hand, and it was choreographed down to the minute, the coffee, the timing, the careful distance until you reached this bench. Like a blueprint for betrayal. I turned to the crowd, to our friends, to the cameras recording every word. An architect understands that every structure tells a story. The materials used, the spaces created, the shadows cast. They all speak to intent, to purpose, to truth. Then I faced Lily one last time, holding up our memory sphere. This is our story. 15 years of love and trust, surrounded by grains of sand from your morning lies. Beautiful, isn't it? How the past can be preserved, even as it's being destroyed. I let the sphere fall. It shattered on the wooden bench, our memories mixing with the sand of their betrayal. The sound of breaking glass was like a signal. Phones chimed all at once as the final batch of evidence went out to everyone we knew. "The thing about glass," I said into the sudden silence, "is that once it's broken, you can never quite put it back together. There will always be cracks, always be missing pieces, kind of like trust." Sarah stepped forward, dropping her sphere too. It exploded at Lily's feet, making her jump back. Then Mike dropped his. More spheres fell, each one a judgment, each crash an ending. I turned away, walking through the parting crowd. Behind me, I heard Lily's sob, Graham's cursing, the murmur of voices, the click of cameras. But ahead of me was the ocean, vast and eternal, ready to wash away any footprints I might leave. I'd designed this moment down to the last detail. Now it was time to let the structure fall. A week after the beach revelation, I sat in my home office watching the video go viral. Local news had picked it up first, then national outlets. Architect exposes wife's affair through glass art installation. The footage showed everything. The betrayal playing on loop in the glass structure, the shattering spheres, the public unraveling of a perfect marriage. My phone had been ringing constantly, clients asking if I was okay, friends offering support, reporters wanting interviews. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the blueprints spread across my desk. Designs for a new life, one without false foundations. Lily had moved out that same day, leaving behind only a note. "You didn't have to destroy everything we built." The irony of her words wasn't lost on me, as if she hadn't been the one laying demolition charges at our foundation for months. Graham's surf school had closed, his reputation in tatters. Last I heard, he'd moved up the coast, looking for new waves, new stories, new lives to erode. Some structures collapse quickly, others just drift away like sand in the tide. Sarah came by, bringing coffee and concern. "The art world is buzzing about your installation," she said. "They're calling it a masterpiece of emotional architecture." I laughed at that. Trust the art world to find beauty in destruction. But maybe they weren't wrong. There was a certain symmetry to it all. Lily had turned our marriage into performance art through her morning meetings. I'd simply provided the gallery space, the audience, the final exhibition. The beach was different now. Every morning people would stop at that bench, taking photos, leaving their own shattered glass as offerings to failed love. Someone had even started a social media trend, numbered trails in the sand, where people shared stories of betrayal and revenge. I didn't visit anymore. Some places, like some memories, are better left to erode with the tide. Instead, I spent my days drafting new plans, designing spaces that could withstand any storm. After all, that's what architects do. We learn from structural failures, we rebuild stronger. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, delivered to my office in a manila envelope that felt too light for the weight of its contents. 15 years reduced to legal terminology and signature lines. I signed without hesitation. Some demolitions need to be complete. My lawyer called with updates about the settlement. Lily wasn't contesting anything, wanting only her art supplies and personal effects. "She's waiving any claim to the house," he said. "Says she can't live with the memories." I wondered if she meant our real memories or the ones I'd trapped in glass, playing forever in an endless loop of betrayal. Perhaps both were equally haunting now. That evening, I walked the beach one last time before listing the house. The famous bench had been removed by the city, too many pilgrims leaving broken glass, too many social media posts geotagged with heartbreak. Only smooth sand remained, wiped clean by tide and time. My phone buzzed. Another interview request, this time from an architecture journal. They wanted to discuss the intersection of emotional and physical design in public art installations. I declined. Some blueprints aren't meant to be shared. In my temporary apartment downtown, I spent evenings drafting new projects. My client list had grown since the incident. Something about public heartbreak made people trust your understanding of structural integrity. Each design felt clearer now, stripped of pretense, built on honest foundations. Sarah visited again, this time with divorce papers of her own. Mike had been inspired by my revelation, she said, and finally admitted to his own morning meetings with a barista. "You started a chain reaction," she told me. "People looking at their own foundations, testing their own walls for cracks." I thought about domino effects, about load-bearing lies and structural failures, about how one exposed fault line can reveal a whole network of hidden fractures. "Do you regret it?" Sarah asked, "making it so public?" I considered the question, remembering the sound of shattering glass, the gasps of the crowd, the way sunlight caught the evidence of betrayal and turned it into art. "Some buildings need to be demolished in full view," I said finally, "so everyone can see exactly why they fell." 1 year later, I stood at my drawing board finalizing plans for a new beachfront museum. The client had specifically requested me after seeing photos of my glass installation. They wanted something that spoke to impermanence, to the way time and tide reshape our lives. I'd designed a structure of glass and steel that seemed to emerge from the sand itself, its foundations deep but visible through transparent floors. Nothing hidden, nothing buried. The walls would shift with the light, revealing different layers throughout the day. Honesty as architecture. The site was 20 miles north of my old beach, far enough that the waves had a different rhythm. I'd moved here after selling the house, leaving behind the viral fame and public scrutiny. Some stories need distance to become art. In my new home, no sand gathered on the doorstep, no footprints marked secret meetings. Instead, I'd built a glass-working studio where I created pieces that sold for surprising sums. More galleries called them emotionally architectural installations. Each one contained a grain of truth, if not all was sand. The last I heard of Lily, she'd moved to the desert. A place without tides, her friend had told me. Graham had vanished completely, like a wave returning to the ocean. Their story had become urban legend, a cautionary tale about morning runs and trusted routines. Sometimes, when I work late at my studio, I think about that final morning on the beach, about structures built on sand, about foundations laid in trust, about the architecture of truth and lies. Each piece I create carries that lesson. Transparency isn't just about glass, it's about letting light reach every corner. The museum would open next spring. Already people were calling it my masterpiece. But I knew better. My masterpiece had been a smaller piece, a moment caught in glass, a truth finally brought to light. Some buildings rise, some fall. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. But the most honest structures are the ones that show exactly what they're made of, inside and out.